Hello class, hello teacher. I got a very bad news that yesterday we have found new case of COVID-19. So I hope that everyone stay home for your safety concern. Okay, now let's move on to our topic. We are from group 4, which is partially responsible for the content of the topic about the conflict perspective and the action to Deviance. My name's Pan Wan Tin, who is in charge of the first part. Chen Mak Kum Su, who takes the second part, and Rajasai, who works for the last part. Friends, teacher, please pay more attention here. It is very important to know about the content today. We have 10 points to be presented, and here, number 1, class crime and the criminal justice system. 2, the law as an instrument of oppression. 3, reaction to Deviance. 4, the decline in violent crime. 5, recidivism. 6, the death penalty and bias. 7, legal change. 8, troubles with official statistics. 9, the medicalizations of Deviance. And 10, the need for a more human approach. Number 1, number 2, number 3 is the first part, which will be presented by me, and number 4, 5, 6, 7 will be presented by Kum Su, and 8, 9, 10 will be presented by Rajasai. Let's start from the first one. Class, crime and criminal justice system. To begin, I would like to explain the phrase criminal justice system. The criminal justice system refers to the system of police, court, and prison set up to deal with people who are accused of having committed crime. Here, we talk a case of Shaw Manufacturing in North Dakota. The company made helmets for the U.S. ground troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. The government official investigated and found that the accusations was true that the company had set their looms to use less caliber than submission specification. Caliber is a fabric that deflects some shrapnels and bullets. So let's see, what was the punishment for this crime? It was unbelievable that no one was put into jail. Society class has played roles in secure when you commit crime. Company just pay a fine, then they got new contract from the government. That's very cool. And that's the reason that we applies conflict theory perspective to study this crime, because conflict theories always takes some factor to scrutinize, investigate about the criminal justice system. Okay. Let's take a look at this slide. See, here the case that the Shaw Manufacturing crime had many factors to understand why serial cases become lies and ineffective. The main factor to get justice in some society are the power, the money, the social class, the family bonds, and social pressure. In the picture, you can see the best quote of New Era is, "If you want justice, it's $200 an hour. Obstruction of justice run a bit more. Okay, let's move to number 2. The law as an instrument of oppression. I would like to focus more about how conflict theorists view about the society. Conflict theory sees social life as a competition and focus on the distribution of resources, power, and inequality. Unlike functionalist theory, conflict theory is better to explain social change and weaker to explaining social stability. Here in the picture of the pig at side shown in the story of Animal Farm. It was depicted the society when inequality was overwhelming the law. Let's hear about the brief story about Animal Farm. First, all animals joined together to reform their society. The pig was a kind of animal which had joined the manifestation. Later, after winning, a pig took control of the puppy dog, which was defined as the military power. One of the pigs got the power. They tried to use the dog as an example of criminal justice system. Afterward, the hen rebelled after the pig had sold their egg. Thus, the pig ordered the dog to kill them all, one by one until the last. All animals felt they were being inequality in society, which pushed them to rebel against the pig. The story was talked about a Russian society during the revolution defeat Russian king. It was totally deflected the society. In sum, conflict theorists stress that the power elite used the legal system to control workers and to stabilize the social order, all with the goal of keeping itself in power. The poor pose a threat, for if they rebel as a group, they can dislodge members of the power elite from their place of privilege. To prevent this, the power elites make certain that heavy penalties come down on those who crime could upset the social order. Let's move on to number 3, reaction to deviance. What happened when we committed crime? See? Street crime and prison. Here, the number of prisoners has increased in US and the government has integrated private sector to provide service. You can see in the table here, they categorize characteristic and of age, rank, ethnicity, sex, marital status, and education. First one, you see that the number 29.1% give to people around 35 to 44 who committed crime. That the majority number for age. And Africans American has committed crime more than the other ethnicity. So that is why Trump has become racism. They say that we gonna build a wall and make American great again. That's why. And other factors such as sex, marital status, and education has played an important role to define criminal number. And here's all my part. Please go next to part which will present by Kim Soo.
So now let's go on to the second point. The second point is about recidivism. And before getting to the point, what is recidivism? Does anyone know about it? Recidivism is a tendency to relapse into a previous condition or mode of behavior, and especially it is a relapse into a criminal behavior. It is said that if a goal of prison is to teach their clients to stay away from crime, they are colossal failures because prison is just a place to keep criminals from going outside to steal something from others. And how can we measure their failure? We can measure their failure by looking at the recidivism rate. Recidivism rate is the percentage of the former prisoners who are rearrested. For people sent to prison for crime and violence, within just 3 years of their release, 2 out of 3 are rearrested and half are back to the prison. And here is the figure that shows the rearrested rate. By looking at this figure, which gives a breakdown of 3 years recidivism by type of criminal, it is safe to conclude that prison do not teach people that crime doesn't pay. So now we are going to the third point. The third point is about the death penalty and bias. The death penalty is usually known as capital punishment, and this capital punishment is the extreme measure that the state takes. As we already know, this punishment arouses the impassioned opposition and the support. And there are also a lot of opponents of death penalties, and they are arguing that this capital punishment sometimes has killed an innocent people and sent them to a death row. But there are still others who are passionate about keeping this punishment just to punish those serial killers. And moreover, this punishment shows social bias, as can be seen in the magazine or TV news. We barely heard about rich people or people who are in higher class to be sentenced to death or to be killed by capital punishment. But we usually hear people who are poor getting sentenced to death. And getting information from the source book of Criminal Justice Statistic 2007, half of the prisoners who are on death row are not finishing high school yet. And furthermore, there are also gender bias in these capital punishment. Almost all the time, we never heard about women getting killed by capital punishment and never heard about them getting sentenced to death. Even on death row, the gender bias continues. And for the state, it's more likely to execute men than women. As you can see in this chart, only 51 women were sentenced to death, and the gender bias could reflect on their previous offenses and the relative brutality of their murder. But we need research to determine of this so. So now let's move on to the fourth point. It is all about legal change. Did you know that it is a crime in Saudi Arabia for a woman to drive a car, and a crime in Florida to sell alcohol before 1 p.m. on Sundays? Well, as has been stressed in this chapter, deviance, including the form called crime, is so relative that it varies from one society to another, and from one group to another group within the same society. And crime also varies from one time period to another, as opinion change or as different groups gain access to power.
To start all off, we'll be looking at trouble with official statistics. Crime statistic does not have an objective. It is not independent either. It is solely a human creation and is impacted by human in many ways. It is not only affected by particular laws that are made by human and existed, but it is also related to how these laws are enforced by the human and also how officials report these statistics. On the diagram on the right, a pie chart, you can see a breakdown of categories of bias incident that has happened. As you can see, more than 50% of the crimes that has happened is biased and related to only their religion, their race and ethnicity, and their ancestry. These crimes are judged not only and not mostly by what they've done, but it's majorly being impacted by how they are born and their religions and their affiliations instead. It is not only affected by the particular laws that existed, but also related to how these laws are enforced and also how officials tend to report these laws. For example, there are two boys. They're about to do the two same things that are suspicious. However, one boy is from a working class, the other one is from a middle class. As you can see where this is going, which one do you think the police will tend to suspect more? The one in the working class or the one in the higher middle class? Exactly. If you thought the police would suspect the one who is at the working class, you are correct. Because the police is influenced by their stereotypical belief that those who are in a lower social class tend to commit more crimes. And this is what caused police discretion and how they could overlook a bunch of incidents due to their own stereotypical belief. Additional factors which contribute to this distrust is the high level of discretion of police activities. Like I already said, police tend to overlook things that happen which they cannot approve or they can't believe to have happened. Like I said, things that are related to religion, race, ethnicity, and ancestry. And another one is how much control the elite have over the legal system. How would you tend to believe that the elites would keep their word and not change the statistic to their own advantages when they have complete control over the legal system? And in this topic, we will be talking about medicalization of deviance, mental illness. To start this, we will first identify the term medicalization, its meaning, definition, and explanation of it as well. First is the meaning. To medicalize something means, well, simply to just medicalize something. But what it actually meant is to classify it as a form of illness. For example, if you were to have a new type of disease, if someone medicalized it, they would consider it and classify it as a form of illness. And an explanation of this is when something is classified with a mental as an illness or a mental illness, as what I was about to say, you tend to perform further medical studies. These studies involve diagnosis, prevention, and treatment. Now, deviances are believed to be mentally ill due to the fact that their behavior or situation are considered to be against the values and norms of society. This is true in some aspects because there are deviances whose actions are unacceptable, such as deviances who show external mental illness symptoms, such as ones who commit crimes such as rape, cheating, murder, stealing, and others. They are considered to be mentally ill and need to be medicalized and prevented so that no other people will have to go through this mental illness and harm others like they did. That is true, but there are deviances whose questionable behavior are not mental illness, but a form of bad habit. Sure, like if you can think about it, for example, people who talk too loud, people who are way too opportunistic, or people who just are overly stubborn or can't accept the fact or won't be able to change according to the situation. They can't adapt. They could also be sometimes considered deviances if they go against the norm and values of society. But, however, does their bad habit count as deviances? Do they need to be medicalized? But it is true that there are deviances that are not harmful, but there are deviances that are not harmful and they also need to be medicalized. These deviances are the ones who have suffered a traumatic past. For example, like if they grew up in a horrible environment, or they have gone through a traumatic experience, like they got lost, or they lost all the thing they had, or they got through a divorce. They are also deviances because they may inhibit symptoms of minor mental illness, which could further turns into major mental illness, and they are the kind of deviances which we actually need to focus on medicalizing in order to help them and also to prevent these situations from happening in the future. Lastly, we will be talking about the need for more humane approaches. Deviants might be people who are against the social norms, and their values might be different from our values. Their situation or behavior might be unacceptable to most of us. But however, we shouldn't treat them as if they were animals or sanction them so that they can't even conform. If deviances aren't able to conform and live a normal way of life, they may stray even further into the path of deviancy and won't recover back as a conformist. It is important to remember that deviancy is inevitable. In a civilized and compassionate society, there are bound to be deviances everywhere. So the bigger issue is protecting people from deviances who causes harm to themselves and to others. Like I stated previously, there are deviances who exhibit external symptoms of mental illness and they've done crimes such as murder, rape, stealing, cheating, and etc. and others. But however, in this point, we're gonna have to talk, even though they've done all those crimes and deserve nothing less than what they did, we should still remember that we are humane, we are human. So we should protect people from those deviances who are dangerous. And in addition, we should also teach people to tolerate deviances who aren't dangerous. That way, we could hope to understand these deviances so that one day we might fully be able to comprehend deviancy and hopefully prevent or treat it, those dangerous forms of deviancy. Remember, they might be deviances, but some of them, and maybe all of them, was once human as well.
Now we reach the end part of our presentation today. Here is the additional part for my presentations that I don't include in the content. To conclude, all the points above have played a big part to describe the conflict perspective and reaction to Deviance.